More Telegraph and Adam, who's turned off the tap?
Yes, so Telegraph, this is Middle Eastern investment in Britain rocked by anti-Muslim riots. So Britain played host to a royal visit last week within Congress setting of the London Gateway Port. When I first read the story, I was a bit sort of swayed going, interesting, I wonder if, these riots, which were labelled far riots or anti-Muslim, would have actually affected it. And as I read through the story, it actually sort of says, actually, these people are investing billions and billions of dollars. They're not actually swayed by a few weeks of unrest.
No, exactly. So this whole idea, Middle East investment in rocked by anti-Muslim, it's a stupid headline, right?
No, it's not a stupid headline, because the truth is, I'm totally rocked by the situation. I mean, granted, I've got no money, but I look good, and I think this is what I think. I think it's if anybody is smart out there, this country, how do I say this in a nice way, is over. It's over.
Okay. Yeah, they're not concerned.
Thank you so much for that insight into the story. Now, there was $10.5 billion invested last year into the UK from the Middle East. That's a huge amount of money. Obviously, we want that money, don't we?
Yeah. Money's always good.
Yes, but what's interesting also is that it revealed how the UAE and the UK government are kind of being on the outs a little bit. Yeah. And I feel like it seems like they feel like, well, we've given you billions. Can you please be nice to us? Yeah. And our government hasn't been. And one of Keir Starmer's first telephone calls was to the head of the UAE. Yeah. So we want that money. But I'm just saying, far-right rioters... Yeah. Just, guys, come on, we want that dosh.
It isn't the problem with the far-right rioters. The people moved to this country, as I did 24 years ago, because it was England.
Right? That's where you came from?
It was England. It was England. So the problem isn't that they're far-right. You're moving to a country where there are far-right rioters.
Oh, I see. That was part of why you moved here.
Yes.
Yeah, OK, fair enough. Right. OK, there's lots of news on the Sunday Telegraph.
That's right, Sunday Telegraph. It's a big paper. You get a lot of news, and it's Sunday. There's always long stories. Extreme misogyny to be treated as terrorism. Home Secretary. It's funny. Home Secretary unveils plan to combat radicalism of young men online.
And older men. And older grey-haired men.
Yeah, you could put anybody. And what is misogyny?
You specifically.
And me. That's why I think it's so funny. It could be considered me. I mean, anyway, it's basically Yvette Cooper, and she's saying, we've got a problem. The big problem in this country, I'm not going to say what the big problem is. You can't say, but the people out there know exactly what the big problem is in this country.
It's extreme misogyny, right?
And it's another word. And she's saying, instead of them dealing with murderers out on the street, they want to deal with people who shave their head.
Well, okay, the argument would be, Adam, that murders out on the street, arguably, certainly the murder of women 1 every 3 days in this country, is because of misogyny. Let's deal with it.
I think there's always a polite way to murder someone, and if you are going to do that, don't be misogynistic.
You should be polite. But the truth is that it's obviously very hard to be a woman. I mean, but, it's just like...
from experience, don't you?
Yeah, well, I see the pain in my girlfriend's face, in my girlfriend's face, whatever. And but who are they including in this? Is incels, people who can't even get girls. They're considered misogynist. They're like locked in their basements.
Involuntary celibate.
So you can't win for losing. And I've got a saying, Josh, which is paranoia is the last hope of the ignored. And that's what this is.
Beautiful. Well, I mean, Adam, this is actually a very serious story. There's no doubt that misogyny in this country is absolutely a crime, and violence, sexual violence and physical violence towards women and young women. To make it a terrorist act, to get Prevent involved in schools, that's a whole different thing. I mean, is that really going to actually solve anything?
It's interesting, isn't it? I guess we're reading this article. It doesn't actually say how they're going to go about this. There's concerns about radicalising young men through social media influencers. They mentioned Andrew Tate.
Of course they did.
Yeah, of course, because they want to give them as much airtime as possible. But it is concerning. I think it was interesting. The Home Office have linked other sort of extremist categories, and they've currently got Islamist, right-wing, extreme right-wing, and then animal rights activists as well.
Animal rights back in the day, that was most of the police time. Yeah. But the other thing would be, I mean, there could be an upside to this because gender ideology is extremely misogynist in terms of wanting men to compete in women's sports, men to be in female jails. So maybe this could be a way of dealing with that.
No, and you know it won't be. It won't be, because this is just a list of stuff that bother the people in power right now, and they just want to lump it together. And it's not. You're right. It's not. It's not terrorism. It's something else. You know, you can have murder.
Bad.
It's bad. You can have murder, but that's not a terrorist act.
Not
but
all misogynists are
Let's very quickly, the other story here. Adam, if you want to cover this one, clapping for the NHS. Would you mind just reading that?
Yeah, so this is, again from the Sunday Telegraph. Clapping for the NHS is like a national religion, is dangerous, says Watchdog. And I think this is really interesting. Basically, the story is by saying clapping for the NHS during the pandemic may be dangerous because it puts the NHS beyond criticism.
Yeah, beyond reproach.
Beyond reproach, yes, exactly. So it's one of those things where you look at it on the surface and you go, OK, I can see somebody can make a tepid point about that. But for me, I don't know. I think that... I clapped for the NHS. I got swept up with clapping.
How dare you?
Yeah, exactly. And the thing I liked about the NHS is clapping for the NHS is the fact it was free. It didn't cost me anything.
Yeah.
And I clap all the time. It's very a cheap form of faint praise. I think it. Did
you feel clap shame? There was, it got to a point where you had to be out.
You had to clap.
Oh, number 48's not out.
Yeah.
The pans.
With the pads as well.
Yeah. We'll get them.
I'd like to say that I did not clap the NHS, and the
fact
fact is,
that when you're in the hospital.
The fact is, the fact is that the NHS is like a national religion. They made it a national religion in 2012 when it was part of the Olympic ceremony, the whole thing.
Yeah, well.
People love the NHS, and you know who has made it the NHS, who has made it a national religion, is Labour. Is Labour. It's like they're...
Well, it's interesting now that you've got Wes Streeting who's coming in and saying, we've got to get real about it. Anyway, let's move on to the Sunday Times, Adam. There's quite a lot of stories here as well.
Yes. OK, so one of the first stories from the Sunday Times, don't shoot where conscripts beg the...
Could you do that in a Russian accent, please?
Yeah. Can I do that?
Don't shoot when conflict!
Yeah, that was the
conscript,
I think, wasn't it, from the car insurance compare adverts?
Yeah.
And there are other car insurance adverts available. So this is...
But that one's the best.
That one is the best. This is prisoners telling of chaos and panic when Ukraine invaded. Our commanders ran away, said Kremlin soldiers. And it's a very interesting story. There's an actual account from a 22-year-old who was drafted 8 months ago during sort of compulsory military service. And he thought he was going in for training. And then it turned out he was sent to guard Russia's western border with Ukraine.
Classic. That's what happened to me here. I came in, bit of training.
And
by the way, here's a clicker. Get presenting.
Yeah, trapped forever. We've all got balls and chains under the desk.
Yeah. So.
Well, this is not going to end. Yeah. It is not going to end because.
It will end.
No, it's not going to. Well, it will end eventually. But I think what it is there's lots of countries in Europe who hate Russia, and they just want to be left alone by Russia. They want to make or punish Russia. They want something done. All those Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia, Poland, all those countries just want to be left alone from Russia, and they're not going to let this drop. And that's why we're headed into the third war. Okay,
well, speaking of Third World War, would you mind, Lewis, just funding crisis means golden age of universities is over. Did you manage to...
I managed to read that. No, I didn't. Funding crisis. It means that basically is the
if you went to university, you would have been able to...
The new Labour... The new Labour.
If you wore glasses, you would have been able to read that as well, by the way.
If I'd read it, I would have been able to read it. But you said, how was I supposed to read 16? Anyway, the truth is that Labour, they made a lot of promises. The end of austerity is over, and there's no money.
Although these are private institutions, so the argument is that they're saying the only way to really get money is to raise the cap on the tuition fees, but also to allow more visas. Is that going to happen, Adam?
I think it's interesting. We do know that students who study abroad typically pay a lot more for the same course than people at residence here. So there's a huge expenditure for them. I think,
and they've got to bring over all their families.
Yeah. Oh yes. Well, I think isn't that very expensive? I have very little sympathy for universities. I think there's too many degrees which are nonsensical. Sort of, they call them Mickey Mouse degrees. Mm-hmm. and I know this firsthand. I did one myself.
Media studies.
Yeah.
Media studies, film studies, stand-up comedy, a waste of money. I hope that this is... And if they raise the cap, I hope people come to their senses, realise degrees are not what they used to be, and do something more important.
This is a problem. This is a problem of centralization, is that the government is involved in everything, including giving these universities money, and they're supposedly private institutions, but the government is involved in money. And
now, Lewis, I'm going to assume you didn't get to read this one because there's so many stories for you. We faced 400 threats in a single day, revealed Jewish chaplains on campus. Well, I did get to read it. Did you manage to read it?
I did.
Pretty insane.
Well, it's not insane. We live in a horrible time right now.
Well, but to see it written out like this, a chaplain, 400 threats in one day. He's got a wife, he's 32. He's got a 4-year-old, 3-year-old.
Yeah.
They're getting death threats, rape threats to the entire family.
Yeah, but they're not us.
Who's not us? The people making the threats.
Oh,
they're not you, so it's okay with you.
No, not me personally. I'm saying they're not British.
Well, this is at Leeds University, and what I find incredible, Adam, here is this little detail here that nobody from the university contacted them to talk about what was going on.
Yeah.
That's mental.
Brush it under the rug, make sure it doesn't happen.
It is not unbelievable. We live in a...
Oh, by the way, here's another little thing. Police arrested 3 people who were released on bail. Great. Well, that's not two-tier policing, is it?
Josh,
rape, death threats to a family. Okay, we'll get more onto the comedy. Well, come on then, Lewis, do the mail in a funny way. Do a funny voice.
I can't do it, but you're like too hyper-serious. And you should be. You're totally right to be serious. This is horrible times we live in, and this is £14 billion bill, for Keir's shabby union cave-in, and this has to do with money that's going to GPs to keep them from going on strike, or more strikes, and train drivers to solve the strikes. And but the truth is that Labour is a union party, and they're invested in this, and we, the people, some of the people voted for them, and because the Tories were so bad that half the Tories voted for reform.
Yeah, half the Tory MPs voted for Labour.
So now we pay. So, no, they voted for reform.
We haven't had this yet. This was always going to be a danger, though, Adam, Well, first of all, I don't think what people appreciate is that Labour didn't really have any choice because they have to take the recommendation from the official pay body. So and doctors have arguably been underpaid. But because of that, that is a sort of a green light to greedy unions, some might say. Certainly, train drivers get paid enough. So the idea that they're now threatening more strikes is somewhat maddening, right? Yeah,
I think what's interesting is, like, I think when I have a lot more sympathy for sort of doctors, GPs, anyone who works in the NHS. I think train drivers and things like that have sort of less sympathy for myself personally, but I have been affected, as everyone has, with the strikes, with the train delays for the last 2 years. And somebody thinks there has to be we need to do something, whether it's pay for it or not. We can't have it as it is.
Or we can do the Ronald Reagan approach, where he fired 10,000 or 14,000 flight people who monitor the flight. What is that called?
There's a third option, though.
And you just fire them. And I'll tell you something. You fire every single doctor in this country.
How about doctors? But maybe the trains, and in terms of making them go automatic, the technology is already there.
Well, not even that. Just you get a whole new bunch of it.
I think we're missing a big opportunity here with the NHS in terms of...
Not that I'm suggesting that.
We should just maybe do more clapping.
Yes, of course. But clap for train drivers, Right, that's the front page is comprehensively comprehended. In the next section, we'll go behind the fold for vaccine compensation, Middle East investment, and why did the SNP pull the whip?